a living testimony. Y'all got to understand that we talked about the pain. We talked about something that everybody in here can testify about. I don't care how nice you looking at me acting like your life has been to this point. But everybody in here know about some pain sometime. Tell your neighbor, I don't care how you look right now, but ain't nobody been pain-free all their life. Do you hear what I'm saying? You got to understand that first of all, you had the pain, but you got to understand that your pain ain't who you are. Your pain is just what you've been through. Do you hear what I'm saying? But I'm so glad, Lord, I'm so glad that Jabez taught me how to pray the right way. I'm so glad that Jabez didn't become pain because mama said that his name meant pain. Do I have a witness here today? I don't know what I'm talking about today. But somebody in here, you couldn't get to the bridge to pray because you're trying to be what they called you. Do you hear what I'm saying? But I've got a word for you. Lord, I've got a word for you. You ain't what folk call you. It's what God said about you. Do you hear what I'm saying? I'm trying to tell somebody. I'm trying to help somebody in here. You've been walking around. Folk didn't call you out your name. Folk didn't call you what God didn't name you. But you got to know today that you can't become what folk call you, but you got to grow into what God called you. Do I have a witness here today? I'm so glad. Lord, I'm so glad. Wow! I feel an anointing in this place. I'm so glad that Jabez might have said to himself, Mama may have called me pain, but I know that may be my name, but that ain't who I am. Do you hear what I'm saying? So instead of just sitting around and becoming what she said, he talked to the Lord who could make him who he was. Do you hear what I'm saying? He taught me, told me how to pray. He said, Lord, I want you to bless me. Some of y'all don't understand the reason you got too many problems, the reason you got craziness, because you're going to the wrong person asking for your blessing. Do you hear what I'm saying? I don't want a blessing from a sugar mama, because when I don't do what she wants, I don't get no more sugar. Do you hear me? Tell your neighbor, tell your neighbor, who are you getting your blessings from? Do you hear what I'm saying? Tell your neighbor, one of your problems, you're calling the wrong person. Some of you call Tyrone, but Tyrone ain't always there. Some of you calling the wrong folk, trying to get the wrong motivation. But I stop by to tell you, if you call on the name of the Lord, he's able. Anybody know he's able? Anybody know he's able? Tell your neighbor that you can call Jesus. He won't block your call. He won't put you on the reject list. Tell your neighbor, if you really want to get blessed, I'm going to tell you what you got to do. His name is Jesus. You can call him up. I love the way my grandmama said. She said, Jesus is on the main line. Call him up. Call him up. Call him up and tell him what you want. Jabez said, I want you to bless me. He said, and when you bless me, some of us right now, we ask God for stuff but we ain't got enough faith to ask for what we want. So we kind of tell God, I'll settle for whatever you give me. But you got to understand, if you got big faith, you can have a big prayer. Jabez said, I've got enough faith to know I ain't got to be what my mama called me, so I can be what my daddy called me. He said, bless me, oh, bless me big time. And he said, Lord, if you bless me big time, the space I got is for little stuff. The space I got is for one vehicle. But when you bless me big time, I'm going to need 4 garages. One for the Mercedes, one for the BMW, one for the boat, and one for the Range Rover. Do you hear me? Oh, I feel like preaching in this house. He said, bless me big time. He said, give Christ my territory. He said, Lord, when you bless me, I want your hand to be on me. Because God already knows if you give me a blessing and don't give me wisdom, I'll blow my blessing. But Lord, when you bless me, I feel like preaching in this place. I'm telling you, when I first got up here, I was tired. And when I saw Wesley come in the door, I said, God, if he had came at 10:30, he'd have been preaching this morning. But God said he can preach another Sunday. Well, I've got a word that you got to tell your folk. You got to tell them how to pray for that thing. First of all, go down on New Way Station and say, Lord, oh Lord, oh Lord, bless me big time. Expand my territory and put your hands on my hand. Do you hear what I'm saying? You got to understand that I talked about the pain. I talked about the prayer. But let me talk about that's how the power comes. Because the Bible says, because he asked God for it. The Bible says, because he asked God for it, God did what he wanted. Tell somebody that what you want ain't out of the question. You just been asking the wrong people, the wrong man, the wrong woman, the wrong job, the wrong Negro, the wrong negrette. Do you hear me? You got to understand that when you trust God, he'll give you the power. I got to go, y'all. But I can tell you about the power. Can I tell you about the power? When Jesus came down to die for us, that Friday, they hung him high. They stretched him wide. He died. He died with some power. But you got to understand, he got up with more power than he went down with. He died with power to heal the sick. He died with power to raise the dead. He died with power to make the lame walk. He died with power to make the dumb talk, but he still had to die to get all power. And you know how he got all power? Before he died, he kept going to the power on the high. He said, Father, that's what the power is. Forgive them. They know not what they do. He says, God, I've got some power, but I know I got to die. So he said, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. Some of y'all don't understand. God didn't turn his back on his son permanently. For about 3 seconds, God had to turn his back on his son. Do you know why he had to turn his back? Because God cannot die. And Jesus was God and man. He had to die. So he said, Daddy, take my spirit. My body got to die, but my spirit can't die. So into thy hands I commend my spirit. Into thy hands put it in the layaway. he died. But early Sunday morning, early Sunday morning, he got up with all power in his hand. You got to understand, Jesus went through pain. They lied on him. They talked about him. They spit on him, pierced him in the side, crown of thorn on his head. That was pain. But after the pain, when he got to the garden, he had to pray to his Father. Do you hear me? He had to pray to his Father. Do you hear what I'm saying? He had the pain, still had to die. He had to get back to the power. So after he died all night Friday. He died Saturday morning. He was dead Saturday afternoon. He was dead Saturday night. But early Sunday morning, I could just imagine Jesus got to reeling, Jesus got to rocking. There was a shift, a supernatural shift from some power to all power. He got up, all power, all power, all power. Is there anybody here? I said, is there anybody here? Grab your neighbor and say, neighbor, I might look good now, but say, neighbor, it ain't always been this week. It ain't always been this way. Say, neighbor, I look like every bill is paid. I look like I got so much money, I can't take no more. I look like I ain't had to cry sometime. But say, neighbor, I learned how to pray. And one thing about it, when you learn how to pray, you don't look like what you've been through. Do you hear what I'm saying? That's why the word tells me in God's word, we are more than conquerors. I used to wonder, Wes, what that meant. We are more than conquerors. Well, I tell you what it means. Back in the day of old-time boxing, when they wasn't running from each other, but they just stood there and boxed until another man nearly died. If you remember Muhammad Ali and you remember George Frazier, there was one fight. You didn't know who won. Ali won the fight, but both of them looked half dead. Ali won the fight, but it looked half dead. I was wondering, what's more than a conqueror? What's more than a conqueror means? When God wins the fight, you don't look like you never had a fight. Do you hear what I'm saying? Do I have a witness? If I look like what I've been through, I look like a monster. I look like crack. I look like alcohol. I'm so glad. Oh, I'm so glad. Oh. Yes, gentlemen. Oh, I'm so glad. High five somebody. If you ain't too ashamed, I want you to go grab a neighbor. I need everybody that ain't too ashamed to find somebody and grab their hands. Go find a neighbor and grab their hands and say, neighbor, I might look good now. Might look like I got it going on now. But say, neighbor, if you could have saw me in my darkest hour, you could have saw me when folk gave up on me. If you could have saw me when I went to hell and back, if you could have saw me when I was tore from the floor up, you wouldn't recognize me. But because of God, I'm stronger, I'm wiser, I'm better, I'm happy. Somebody say thank you. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. I'm trying to stop y'all. I'm trying to stop. But don't nobody know. A lot of folk look right now. Look at what Pastor drives now. Look at where It works now. Look at the credit that it got now. But if you knew the road I came, you got to understand I ain't never been popular with other